Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a week we have had. Lots of economic stuff, lots of the GOP showing us where their values are, and nowhere better than going to Iowa, because it appears Iowa Republicans are at war with Wisconsin. And you go, what do you mean, Rick? Well, this is priorities. This is, the people telling us how pious and religious they are, and then showing us, well, not. Evidently, they're working on this new House bill. It's House File 3. They're targeting Medicaid and several other public assistance programs, but SNAP being right front and center. The SNAP benefits. You know how we help poor people get food? The supplemental nutrition program that we've done that's fully funded by the federal government. Well, states have used this as ways to twist down on people. Well, Iowa now at the front of this. They are moving on this legislation that's going to put massive restrictions on who can get SNAP benefits. It's going to limit what they can get at the stores and cheese. The reason I bring up Wisconsin is no more sliced cheese. No sliced, no cubed, no crumbled cheese. No American cheese can be purchased with SNAP benefits. Let this sink in. Now, I did fall down the rabbit hole of Iowa's proposed SNAP changes, and no fresh meat. Sorry, no fresh meat for you. You've got to eat the canned stuff like canned tuna and canned salmon. No fresh stuff. No baked or refried or chili beans. None of that. You can only buy black, red, and pinto. I don't like black, red, or pinto. And no white grains. This is the weird thing. No white bread. Sorry. It's got to be 100% whole wheat bread. Brown rice. Whole wheat pasta. And you go, there's part of me that goes, I kind of understand that you want people to eat healthier. I kind of get this. But on the backdrop of, if you remember Michelle Obama, doing that lunch thing that we wanted to make lunches healthier and not consider, pizza a vegetable. This kind of flies in the face of, all of their rhetoric. Which again, just shows you how hypocritical they are. But the thing is I started to read through this and the massive restrictions that they're putting on people. For instance, you can only have $2,000 worth of cash in the household. So you can have virtually no savings. You can have no rainy day fund, to have next month's rent ready to go. I got to tell you, $2,000 isn't a lot of money. And you're only allowed to have one automobile per household. That's it. And you go, what? What does that got to do with feeding people? And how are they going to get jobs to... Never mind. That's not the point. The point is to make these programs so difficult, put so many obstacles and hurdles in the way that people just go, the heck with it. We'll go hungry. That's the point. And again, these are the people who tell us how pious they are, wear their religiosity on their sleeves, and tell us what a Christian nation we are. And I know I'm going to get angry emails. You're beating up on Christianity. No, I'm not beating up on Christianity. I'm beating up on bad Christians. Get it right. Now, the pandemic showed us, or showed a lot of us, how difficult these programs are to navigate. How incredibly hard it is to be poor in this country, especially when you have a political party hell-bent on kicking you while you're down. They go through all of the ways they monitor your income. They go through all your ways of monitoring your assets. And basically, if you ask for assistance to feed your family, you are surrendering your soul to Republican oversight. Again, I look at this and I go, Iowa, you're the breadbasket of the country. You're part of that breadbasket. The SNAP program should be something you should celebrate because of the amount of money that goes into your farmers, into the job creation, into all of that. Because, well, we're providing food. And again, understand, it is 100% funded by the federal government. Where the states have an interest in this is the states and the federal government split the administrative costs 50-50. So administering the program is a 50-50 split. But the money that goes out to people is the money that comes from the federal government. And the point of this is making sure that we don't have people going hungry. Now, why is this important? Because Biden's got an initiative that in the next, now 7 years, we're going to end childhood hunger. How are you going to do that when you have people putting massive roadblocks in the way? Now, understand, these SNAP benefits, I know people love to believe all these fanciful things that, like living on welfare is like, Club Med. Trust me, I grew up in the projects. I've used food stamps. There's no fun in this. There's no saving your humanity. There's no saving your identity. It's humiliating. Shouldn't be, especially in a Christian nation. But this is where we are. Before the pandemic, the average SNAP benefit was a meager $127, about $4.17 a day. $1.39 a meal, they're saying. Because of the pandemic, we brought in some additional money, this emergency allotment to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the SNAP program, that got a little bit more into people's pockets. In fact, they boosted it up to about $240 a month per person to be able to feed folks because, inflation, food prices just going through the roof. That's going to end here in March. 1st of March, that goes away. You're going to see that number drop down to $170, which means hunger is going to go up. The thing that we learned during the pandemic, and I know this is really hard for people to understand. The thing that we learned, here it is, that if we give people the ability to buy food and feed themselves, they're going to. Yeah, I know. It's remarkable. I understand. And that with government policy, we were able to cut poverty in half. I know, mind-blowing, remarkable, incredible. But as of March 1st, when this emergency allotment goes away, you're going to have older Americans who, at the minimum level, could see their benefits go from the $240, $280 down to $23. And you go, well, they should go out and get jobs. Well, we can have that discussion. And I've said before, I'm against handout programs. I've always been against handout programs. I'm in favor of jobs programs. We don't have that capacity. We aren't doing that. So saying that we're going to do away with the SNAP benefits in hopes of some ridiculous notion of that, the churches are going to do it. Sorry, not going to happen. But this kind of prioritizes where the Republicans are. Now, I fell down in the rabbit hole. I did it so you don't have to. And I started looking at the things that you are allowed to buy at the grocery store. And these states have put massive restrictions on what you're allowed to buy using these SNAP benefits. And it reminds me of when I was a kid. I mean, the sad reality is it's burnt into my brain. I was about 8 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. And if I could find where, because I'm sure the woman has passed on, if I could find out where they buried her, I would dig her up so I could kill her again. Or just once. Not again. Because it was it's the most humiliating thing that I've ever gone through. And it was over a 10-cent Nutter Butter bar, those little Debbie things. I went to the store to use the clown money that my mother had given me to go pick up some things that we needed. And she made a federal case out of it in front of a whole bunch of people. And at that moment, as an 8-year-old going, no one should have to go through this. No one. But as I'm going through the list, I'm going, the baby food caught my attention. because you can only get baby food that, well, is oatmeal and rice. Oatmeal, rice, and multi-grain. No fruit additives, no added formula, no added milk, none of that. You can only get the 8 ounce and the 16 ounce of rice, oatmeal, multi-grain. That's it. And you look at this list, and again, highly restrictive to put barriers in the way. And I'm telling you, at some point, we as a society have to hold these people accountable. This is disgraceful. I want to go to the phones. I got Kurt on line one. Kurt, how are we doing today?
Hey, Rick. How are you today?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Hey, you're right about Iowa. They should be celebrating the SNAP program, especially when their two-term governor, Democratic Governor Tom Vilsack, has been in the USDA for 10 of the last whatever many years.
Right? I mean, this is a boom for them. They should be promoting this program and getting food to people because you know what? It's their revenue. It's their gross national product. It's what pays the bills.
Exactly. And I remember I actually sat in the USDA office with Secretary Vilsack back in 2010, and we were talking about the SNAP program. And I don't know if it's on there, but you said something about a Nutter Butter.
Yeah.
He said something about how there's a fine line there because, can you buy, say, a Twix candy bar? Because is it a candy bar or is it a cookie? Because I guess you can buy cookies, but you can't buy a candy bar or something. At least back in 2010, that was the situation.
Yeah, but here's what this does, Kurt, and you know this as well as anyone. You remember that idiot a couple of years ago who got the SNAP benefit and then went to like a CVS and bought $100 worth of candy and said, "Look what I did." No person is going to do that. They're going to go and buy the food that they need, and we see this time and time again. Study after study has shown when you give people the resources to take care of themselves and get the things they need, they use those resources appropriately. Are there a handful of idiots? Yeah. Mostly conservative
that's
pundits.
What I was going to say. There's always going to be that one. I'm going to be generous with the percentage here. There's always going to be that 1% person who's going to abuse the system. There's always going to be that. So no social program system is perfect. But you know what? If we didn't have these, my gosh, I looked at it the other day. I actually got someone on Medicaid the other day who was very ill. And you know what? I got them on within hours, and they were so happy for it. So I'm looking at it as, yeah, the system may have its fraud, and I'm not going to deny that it does of any level, whether it be food stamps, SNAP, or Medicaid, or whatever. But you know what? You got to look at the fact that think of the people who are actually going to use those things to make their lives better, because food insecurity, healthcare insecurity, those are the things that are wrong. And as long as we have people who are eating right, which I thought that food stamp, I keep going back to food stamps, I got to stop saying that. SNAP program benefits, doesn't the farmers market accept that now, like in local farmers markets?
Yeah, some of them, yeah, most of them do, yes. Because we want people producing.
And then,
yeah.
And then what I was going to say is anyone who has adequate food, as far as an adequate diet, and proper health care, you're going to see less people missing school. You're going to see less people missing work. And wouldn't you think, oh, my gosh, that's the basis of a great society?
There you go. I'm right there with you, Kurt. I appreciate the call, man. Thanks so much.
Right, thank you. Bye-bye.
No, this is – and here's the part. And Kurt hit on something that is really interesting. They go, there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse out there. And again, there may be pockets of problems that we can deal with, but for me, when I want to talk about the waste, fraud, and abuse, let's talk about it at the top. Let's talk about these corporations who game the system. Let's talk about these lobbyists who are able to pocket billions of dollars out of these programs. Let's talk about that, not the little person who maybe got that candy bar. It's disgraceful. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Do you have a story? something pop up in your past that reminds you of trauma of the past? I want to hear it. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Back after this. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
The sad reality is what we've done in this country is we've allowed the Republican Party to weaponize our social safety net and basically hold us hostage over the idea that we care for each other, that we make sure that our neighbors don't go hungry, that their children don't go to bed hungry at night. And they've done this kind of stuff. And look, you know, this is where I've gotten into a couple of conversations this week with people going, because I've been saying, look, I look at the failed states of the South, Arkansas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi. I look at those states, I go, they're failed states. Their policies are terrible. They don't do what their citizens need done. Time to reimagine it. And the responses I got back from people were, you hate the people. No, I love the people. Individually, I love everybody. Collectively, there's the problem. And their government doing, well, this kind of stuff, where we're going to make that 8-year-old who's doing nothing but trying to make it to the next day, we're going to beat them down. These programs should not be about punishing people. These programs should not be about humiliating people. They should be a hand up. They should be giving people opportunity, which is why, again, as I've said before, I'm not in favor of handout programs. I believe we should have jobs programs. If the private sector can't, or more likely won't, create enough jobs that people can afford to live on, then the public sector has to. I know. That's socialism, Rick. No, that's good public policy. That's creating an economy that works for everyone. That's creating competition. Something conservatives used to believe in. We need more decent people in politics. That's the problem. Now, I came across this story over at the Washington Post of this guy, Hody Childress. And what a heartwarming story. You don't see this often. But I guess this guy just recently passed. And he lived in Geraldine, Alabama, a small town. And they walk through this guy's life. And the reason that they did this story on him is every month he used to go to the local drugstore and give the owner of the drugstore $100 and said, hey, I want you to, if someone can't afford medicine, I want you to be able to pay for their medicine, but don't tell anyone. I don't want anyone to know. And I guess he's been doing this for at least over a decade, I guess. Every month, religiously, on his small pension, with his meager savings, he's been going in there and doing this without anybody knowing. This, my Christian friends, this is what it's about. It's about making people's lives better and not looking for the praise. This guy never wanted the attention, never sought the limelight, never said, hey, look at me, but did something nice, did something good. And the only thing he asked is, don't tell a soul where the money came from. If they ask, just tell them it's a blessing from the Lord. That, to me, If you're truly in that Christian mindset, that's it. You don't spend $100 and then on helping people and then $500 on saying, hey, look what I did. Now, as I'm reading through this story, it's heartwarming. It's amazing that there are people still like this. And I believe more people. I believe that the majority of us are good, decent people. And we should be promoting that. The sad thing is we shouldn't have to have this guy taking from his meager retirement savings and going undercover into the pharmacy to help his neighbors. Shouldn't have to happen. Shouldn't be that way. Again, here's somebody who, because his wife had ailments, they tell the story of how he used to carry her up the bleachers and they would sit and watch the high school football games until he couldn't carry her anymore. I mean, just heartwarming kind of true family kind of stuff. We shouldn't have to have people doing this individually. And this, again, I come back to where my belief in government is. My belief in government is we do collectively the things we can't do individually. He individually couldn't solve all the problems in that small community. Couldn't. He could help a little bit, as we all could, and we all should. And that's the power of our government. If we the people, demand it. Individually, and I come back to the SNAP benefits. Individually, I have yet to meet even the most diehard conservative who says we should slash and burn those programs. Individually, when you talk about humanity, when you talk about decency, I've yet to find someone who would look me in the eye and go, no, screw those people. Let them starve on the street corner. Collectively, the Republican Party, the policies that they move are doing just that. And that's my problem here. It's my problem with the current Republican Party. They hate working people. It is that simple. Especially working people who are down on their luck. Now, I don't think this is going to pass in Iowa. Next week, we're going to reach out to our friend J.D. Scholten, who's in the House there, and get his thoughts on this legislation. But, I keep coming back to we're divided, we're pitted against each other, we're sliced and diced, we're meant to be at each other's throats. And when we are, the very wealthy, they're the ones who win out in this. The conversations we should be having around SNAP benefits is how do we get people access to the nutrition that they need? How do we do it in an efficient way so that we can use those resources better? How do we do it in a way that it ensures people who get them, use them properly, and they are, and then get them the help that they need so that they don't have to? I look at myself. I was very fortunate. You know what got me out of poverty? A union job. You want to start moving people from poverty to prosperity? Let's start creating good jobs. And I think this administration, we're moving towards bringing manufacturing back. And those can be good jobs. I would argue when they're union jobs. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Got any questions, comments, something on your mind? Hit me up with an email, especially angry people. I want to hear someone tell me, no, let them starve. I know some idiot will send me that, but quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day the Flint Women's Emergency Brigades were founded. Janora Johnson, a socialist, was a main leader of the Women's Auxiliary Number 10 throughout the strike. A different kind of auxiliary, it built the leadership skills of women through classes in labor history and public speaking. It also set up a first aid station and child care center, raised strike funds, and walked the picket lines. The Women's Auxiliary was transformed through its actions at the Battle of Bull Run when the women put their bodies between the strikers and the police. According to Janet Hazzett, the women moved beyond supporting the strike to participating in it. 50 women signed up the next day. By the end of the strike, over 300 women had joined. The women adopted an official uniform of red berets and red armbands. They were armed with clubs to smash factory windows when police gassed the sit-downers. Their participation in the strike was heroic, and their work continued after the victory. They sought to represent the interests of women auto workers, who often found co-workers less than welcoming and experienced sexual harassment and occupational discrimination at the hands of supervision. Many women auto workers formed the core leadership of several chapters. Historian Nancy Gabbin notes that this was not always the appropriate arena for advocacy, saying, quote, "By encouraging women workers to participate in the auxiliaries, the UAW abdicated its responsibility to these workers." However, Johnson emphasized, it was a radical change to give women a right to participate in discussions with their husbands, with other union members, with other women, to express their views. That was a radical change for those women at that time. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Sometimes little things can be a big deal. For example, in considering ways to help protect Mother Earth from global environmental rampages by us humans, look out your window. In many cities and most suburbs, chances are you're looking at a lawn, a grass-carpeted yard that looks almost the same as the one next door, the one next to it, etc. Some see a lush expanse of green grass as the ultimate in landscaping beauty, and some even consider a well-manicured lawn to be a measure of one's moral character. Beauty and piety aside, though, the spread and intensification of lawn culture has become an environmental extravagance that is already unsustainable in whole sections of our country, and it adds up to a steadily increasing burden on Earth's essential resources. Grass itself is natural, but keeping it alive across thousands of square miles is not, for it requires a deluge of chemicals and endless rivers of water applied again and again, yard after yard, trying to keep those plots green. And, oh, the irony, their green includes eliminating bees, butterflies, and, well, nature. One statistic tells the tale. Americans use more than 10 times more poison per acre on lawns than America's farmers use on their crops. Just glance around you and you'll see the grass lawn imperative at work throughout your community. It surrounds local schools, greens up corporate complexes, spreads across college campuses, forms miles of golf courses, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is not a diatribe against grassy plots, which can be natural joys. But let's get real, get creative, and get in touch with the full balance and beauty of nature. You can promote ground cover sanity right where you live with native plants, xeriscaping, organic methods, rain gardens, and rewilding your yard with things like prairie grass. For help, go to rewild.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Mitch McConnell on Thursday said the U.S. has never and will never default on its debt. Now, this is an interesting signal because you've got the hostage takers there in the House basically wanting to shoot the hostage. Now you've got McConnell saying, never happened, never going to happen. Now, is this to reassure the markets that everything's going to be fine, that Republicans aren't really crazy, that they're really not going to shoot the hostage as they've been threatening? I don't think McConnell's got his thumb on the pulse. I think Republicans do. I think they want to shoot the hostage. But here to share some thoughts on the debt ceiling fight and what this is going to mean, not just for our economy, but the hostage situation and what it could mean to working people. I've asked Mike Mitchell to come talk with us. Mike is the Director of Policy and Research at the Groundwork Collaborative. Groundworkcollaborative.org is their website if you want to check out the work that they do. Mike, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thanks for having me.
So McConnell has said we have never and we will never. Does that make you warm and fuzzy inside?
It does not. I think you mentioned it, and this is totally right. You know, this new House Republican majority is absolutely holding our economy hostage. They want to force cuts to critical programs like Social Security and Medicare, and they want to do it not because they have their own vision on how to help working class people, not because they have their own vision to solve big problems around climate change, or to make sure that people can afford rent or make ends meet, at the grocery store. They want to do it because they want to cut taxes for their wealthy buddies and for big corporations. That's what this is always about. And you can see it in other ways in some of their first bills that they've been voting on here, early on in the session. This is about holding the economy hostage, working class people hostage, because they want to cut taxes for wealthy people. They want to get rid of funding for the IRS. Nothing more than that, plain and simple.
No, and you look at what they put out this week, that fake tax act or whatever they're calling it, which is a 23% federal sales tax. If you think inflation is bad now, if this were to pass, can you imagine a 23% tax on? I think if you were to do that, you would spiral us right into a depression, because deflation would take over because nobody could afford anything.
Oh, it's terrible policy. It's, first of all, it's a stretch to call it policy, but it's a terrible approach to thinking about revenue. And let's be real. If you're talking about a sales tax, if you're an average working person and you have an income that doesn't rise, with the stock market, you're not at the wealthy end of the income spectrum. If you're talking about a sales tax of that magnitude, it's going to eat up a significant portion of what you make paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, people at the top end of the income spectrum, because so much of their money is just going into, investments and going into savings, this has very little impact on them. And because we're using it to replace a progressive income tax, it's just more butter on the bread for rich people, and asking, working class folks, low income folks to foot the bill. And to be real, it doesn't even cover the full bill. It adds to the deficit. So it's not real sound policy. It's not real serious legislation. It's just another attempt to appeal to their wealthy donor class, and to put out these kind of soundbite policy ideas that actually don't address any of the real issues that working class folks care about or really need addressing.
No, I mean, the reality is, and I say this all the time. In fact, we've created the hashtag Republicans Hate Working People. Just look at their policies, because again, this is another one of those situations where it is about kicking the working people. It is about, it's amazing to me that every time there's a crisis, every time something needs to be done, it's always the working people who have to take it on the chin. We never talk about raising taxes on the wealthy. We never talk about going after people who have the resources to help. We go, no, you just have to tighten the belt a little bit, Mike. Just tighten the belt. Well, you know what? Right. The belt is strangling us.
No, you're totally right. I mean, the IRS funding fight, I think, is just so illuminative of this. And I know people, when you say IRS, their eyes glaze over. But seriously, if you're looking at right now where the IRS is, they have, in 2021, they had about 8,300 auditors, right? That's 40% fewer than they had in 2010. But there was some colleagues over at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities did another analysis. That's 2,300 fewer revenue agents than the IRS had in 1954. 2,300 fewer than they had in 1954. I just always find that bonkers. If you think that we can have the IRS that's at a lower auditor, revenue agent status, today than it was, what is that, 70 years ago, and think that we're going to be able to, collect the taxes on the wealthy and the, large multinational corporations who lawyer up every single time they get audited, you're kidding yourself. And it is this complete creation of a tax system that works one way for the wealthy, works one way for large corporations, and then works a completely another way for folks like you and me. And the GOP is actively trying to protect that system. Yeah. And you're totally right. It's just another indicator of the ways in which they are hostile towards working class people, hostile towards, everyday kind of folks, but they want to lay out the red carpet for their, special interests and their corporate buddies.
No, but you hit on something here that, look, I don't like paying taxes either. I'll be honest with you, but don't. But I do, because it's how we get roads and bridges and education and healthcare and the things that we need. But we've been trained like Pavlovian dogs that anytime we hear the word tax or the IRS, we start foaming at the mouth. I think pointing out what you just said is really important, because there are two different tax codes. The one all of us working people have to deal with, and then the ones the rich get to negotiate with. The ones the rich get to bully around. And I want people to understand that they there are people, and I had this conversation the other day. There are people who spend $2 to save $1 in taxes just because they can, just because they can take money away from helping poor people. And it's ideological. It's not even about the money. It's about the principle to them. And this is where you have to have someone who is big enough and strong enough to take on these gazillionaires and these huge corporations. Or am I off base?
No, you're totally right. I mean, look, I think one of the important things here with IRS funding is that in the absence of the IRS having the resources to go after these real tax cheats, and like, make no mistake, when we're talking about the tax gap, the difference between what is owed and what is actually collected by the IRS, it's the wealthy, it's large corporations that are overwhelmingly responsible. But when they don't have the resources to go after the big tax cheats, they turn and they say, okay, well, who can we collect from? And they're looking for places where, unfortunately, they're start to target, folks who they think on the margins might have made a mistake or missed things, right? And so, and I think that's a real fundamental problem, because it erodes exactly what you say. It erodes that trust. It erodes that belief that our revenue system, our tax system, our public policy works for everybody. And, Rick, I will say, I am actually someone who very much takes a lot of pride in paying my taxes. And there's great research. Actually, a lot of people actually take a lot of pride in knowing that they're paying into a system that makes sure that their neighbors and their kids have the resources they need to put food on the table, every day, or make sure that people have the money that to, afford rent, or to make sure that someone, when they lose their job, they can get the benefits that they need so until they find their next job, right? I think that is a great and beautiful system. And because we have a political party that is invested in destroying that system, it creates this space for cynicism. It creates this space for that erosion of trust that ultimately leaves us all worse off. Well, almost all of us worse off, because there's the monopoly men on the other end of the income spectrum who take it to the bank.
No, you're spot on. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Mike Mitchell. Mike is the chief cook and bottle washer over there at the Groundwork Collaborative. He's the director of policy and research there. You can check out their website, groundworkcollaborative.org. We'll get links out on social media. Now, it's interesting to me, and again, I keep coming back to this frame. Republicans hate working people. Just look at their policies. That we're up against this debt ceiling, and we should have an argument about what we're spending money on before we spend it, not when we have to pay it. But it's interesting to me that in this moment, they're choosing to hold not just this country but the globe hostage to get Social Security cuts that don't add to the deficit, and by law cannot add to the deficit. It's interesting that that's the first club out of the bag. Let's kick granny. Let's kick the working class. Let's go after that, even though it has nothing to do with the issue.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, I think this has been a priority for a long, long time. And in part, it's because, kind of to what we were just talking about, Social Security is really popular. People, have a strong attachment to this Social Security. It is a remarkably effective program. And, because there is such a strong attachment, because it is so popular, because it has been so critical in ensuring, for a large population of our of folks here in this country, don't just fall off the economic map. It is a huge problem to the kind of conservative rhetoric that government can't do anything for you, right? And so it has to be on the chopping block. It has to be in the crosshairs for them, because it just stands completely in the face of what they're trying to tell you every single day, that government can't work for you. Government can't make things better for you. Social Security does that for a lot of people consistently. So yes, it is absolutely a part of, their ethos that, when they have the opportunity to hold us all hostage, they're going to try and get rid of the things that stand in the way of the kind of the ideological project that they've been trying to push on people for a long, long time.
Yeah, their wet dream to destroy it, because as I've said, Social Security is the absolute, hands down, best anti-poverty program we've ever moved on. It took millions of people out of poverty, gave people like my grandparents the ability to lead out their lives with dignity and respect in their own homes, in their golden years, without having to eat cat food, without having to worry about being out in the streets. And that security, I think that's something that our Republican friends seem to not be in favor of. You look at what they've done to our safety net over the years, and every chance they get, they're holding us hostage. And again, it's not just Republicans either. We got a couple of Democrats as well. And I look at Joe Manchin, who is now signed on to this trust act with Mitt Romney. And here's what I trust. I trust this, if this passes, it doesn't help working people. I trust that. But again, using this debt ceiling fight to go after our ability to get Social Security is amazing to me. And you got a couple Democrats too, I think, are going to go along.
Yeah, no, there's absolutely no reason for Senator Manchin or anyone else to play along with this. We saw this play out in 2011 when politicians negotiated over the debt limit, and they ended up with an agreement that strangled and held back our economy for years. Right, it included devastating cuts for workers, for veterans, for families. It really hamstrung our ability to make the kinds of investments that we know drive a strong economy. Right, we cannot let that happen again. I cannot stress to you how much over the past few years the kinds of investments that we made in working people, in small businesses, in our economy have been responsible for one of the strongest post-recession, the pandemic recession, post-recession recoveries that we have had in history. In history, we recovered every single job from the pandemic in 28 months. It took us over 6 years to do that same feat after the Great Recession. Why is that? Because this time around, we actually put money into working class people's hands, into small businesses, into our economy in a way that helped growth. And if we agree to certain things like what Senator Manchin is entertaining, it completely limits our ability to do that. And it is a fundamental threat, not only to our economy, but more importantly to working class people, to families and communities across this country, who have played absolutely no part in this debt ceiling, debacle.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this, and again, I come back down to conservative economics. The supply side voodoo Reaganomics stuff that the globe in many places has embraced. And I was just reading a story out of the UK that had they not followed the Brexit, had they not followed all of the bad conservative policies, the argument was the citizens in Britain would be 40% richer. And you come here and you go, had we not gone down this tax cut regime and created gazillionaires and had a massive redistribution of wealth from the people who do the work to the people who the hardest day's work they do is taking money from our pockets to put in theirs, we would probably be in that range as well. So again, these policies that we're talking about that they want to move are working exactly as they're designed to make a handful wealthier and the rest of us, well, not.
Yeah, that's entirely right. And there's a large body of research that supports exactly what you said and looks at the ways in which where you build an economy, when you build public policy around the idea that working people, everyday folks are at the heart of the economy. When you center them, you're going to build not only stronger economic growth, but it's more sustainable and more robust economic growth, right? I mean, that's the other thing that we've seen over the past couple of years is that when you leave the economy in the hands of these like large, powerful corporations or the wealthy, it's brittle. And the minute there's any kind of issue like a pandemic, a lot of the structures that we depend on for our economy even to function just completely fall away.
Yeah.
So if we're not making those kinds of investments in like a real robust, sustainable economy, then any growth that there even is for working class folks is just susceptible to just being washed away whenever there's any indication of hard time.
Yeah, no, I got into some trouble with some listeners angry at me because I said inflation isn't so much of a problem if we had a stronger labor movement, that wages kept up with inflation. If we had wages that were keeping up, it wouldn't be such a problem. But the fact is wages aren't. So the reality is wages aren't driving our inflation problems. Good old-fashioned American corporate greed is driving our inflation problems.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the frustrating things about this whole inflation conversation is, we're stuck on saying, okay, can the Federal Reserve tame inflation with raising interest rates? And the first issue with that is the things that are driving inflation right now are not things that the Federal Reserve can control whatsoever, right? And I know we've talked about this before, but the war in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, is impacting global energy markets. It's impacting other grain and other commodity markets, right? Federal, Reserve interest rate hikes can't address that. We're talking about supply chain issues that are caused by the pandemic. Federal Reserve interest rate hikes can't address that. You're talking about corporate greed, like you just mentioned. Federal Reserve interest rate hikes can't address it. You know what it can do? It can slow our economy to a halt. It can push companies to fire workers or cut wages and make life much more miserable for workers. And you can end up with a scenario where workers are not only out of a job or dealing with stagnant wages, but they're also dealing with higher prices, right? So that's the first issue that we have to talk about. The second one is that the Federal Reserve itself is increasingly going against a growing chorus of experts, of analysts, of lawmakers, of economists who are saying they need to take a break. They need to slow down because, in part, the actions that they've already taken may already be too much, and they may be pushing us into an unnecessary recession. And I think that there's a lot of concern and a lot of really interesting analysis that's come out more recently that makes it clear that, one, what the Federal Reserve is saying it can do, it can't really do without pushing us into a recession. And two, if it's talking about this, stable price, kind of 2% benchmark, there's some ways you can look at some of these recent inflation numbers and say we're actually closer to that than what they're telling you. So what the kind of popular media narrative is that we're at right now. So I think that this is absolutely a moment where, if we're worried about inflation, one of the best things we can do is have the Federal Reserve take a pause and have lawmakers on the Hill address the underlying issues. And first and foremost, let's talk about corporate greed, and let's talk about the ways in which we can get profiteering under control. Let's build robust supply chains that don't just break underneath any pressure. And then also address some of these other cost drivers that people are worried about in terms of housing, prices of food, things of that nature.
Last question I got for you: do you see some of this stuff happening? I've been calling for who's going to be the next Harry Truman, with the profiteering commissions during the war, or the next Teddy Roosevelt to break up some of these big behemoth corporations, some of these almost monopolies. I'm seeing some bits and pieces. Are you seeing anything that would give us hope that some of this might be addressed?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are encouraging signs. I think that there have been pieces of legislation last session and some that may be coming down the pike this session that are geared towards addressing profiteering, that are geared towards corporations that are trying to take advantage of individuals in specific sectors. I know, like for landlords, for instance, and other spaces. I think that some of the work by various agencies around, say, non-compete clauses and making sure that corporations just can't freeze workers out of markets just when they decide to leave, your company. I think those are very encouraging signs. I think that there are, even more steps that can be taken. There are ways in which everyday folks can continue to organize and push lawmakers to tackle corporate power, to tackle the outsized power of the wealthy in our democracy, to look for ways to rein in, big companies and to hold them accountable. But I think that there are a lot of the embers there already, and hopefully that can continue to grow.
Well, that is the hope. But Mike, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing some of your expertise. Hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
No, absolutely. Always a pleasure.
Great stuff. Mike Mitchell, he is the Director of Policy and Research at the Groundwork Collaborative. Groundworkcollaborative.org, the website. Make sure you check that out. We'll get links out on social media, how you can see that. Want to hear your thoughts? 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1986. That was the first time Dr. Martin Luther King Day was observed as a national holiday. A powerful voice for civil rights, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while standing on the second floor of the Lorraine Motel. he was in Memphis standing up for the rights of black garbage collectors. Dr. King gave his life supporting those fighting for union recognition. Throughout his work as a civil rights leader, Dr. King spoke powerfully of the importance of unions. Addressing a group of Teamsters in 1967, he said, "Union recognition meant the real beginning. Union meant strength, and recognition meant the employer's acknowledgement of that strength." Perhaps his most stirring reflections on the labor movement came in a speech he delivered to the AFL-CIO in Springfield, Illinois in 1965. King said, "The two most dynamic movements that reshaped the nation during the past 3 decades are the labor and civil rights movements. Our combined strength is potentially enormous. We have not used a fraction of it for our own good or for the need of society as a whole. If we make the war on poverty a total war, if we seek higher standards for all workers for an enriched life, we have the ability to accomplish it, and our nation has the ability to provide it. If our two movements unite their social pioneering initiative 30 years from now, people will look back on this day and honor those who had the vision to see the full possibilities of modern society and the courage to fight for their realization. On that day, the brotherhood of man, undergirded by economic security, will be a thrilling and creative reality."
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. Let's get to the phone lines. Got Alice on one. Alice, how are we doing today?
Oh, we're doing okay.
What's on your mind?
Well, you know, I'm reading more and more about this George Santos, if that is his name, because they're finding out he has like 3 or 4 other aliases. And I'm just thinking to myself, it would be so ironic to find out that he's an undocumented alien. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't that just be the thing to
And they
find
would
out?
justify it. Look, he is who the Republican Party is. They're cons. There's nothing surprising me. And I hope Democrats will take my advice and do nothing. Leave this albatross around the Republican Party's neck. He is them. He is their reflection in the mirror. Let them have to deal with it. This idea, he needs to resign. No, let them deal with it.
Oh, well, my husband and I are with you on that. And we also agree that if it would come out that he's not a citizen, and he's an undocumented alien, that they would come up with some sort of outrageous justification for it.
No, of course. He's a drag. He was a drag queen. Won competitions as a drag queen. This is one of their key outrages. One of their own. It's remarkable. The gymnastics these people will do.
Well, he couldn't have been too much of a drag queen, because I saw the pictures and I'm thinking, that's no one that would make it on RuPaul's Drag Race. But I guess I'm spoiled.
There you go.
I like my drag race. But I do. Years ago, I had a friend that I worked with when I was a manager at McDonald's, and he was gay, and he would do drag queen shows, and I would go out shopping at thrift stores and find him outfits and
nice
get wigs for him and whatnot. So I like my drag race.
There you go. Good stuff.
Good evening.
I appreciate it, Alice. Look, just because he was a drag queen, that doesn't mean anything to me, but don't be a hypocrite about it. Don't be a hypocrite. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you find your favorite podcasts, you'll find ours. Quick break. Right back.
We know that we have a small window to invest in clean energy and innovation and clean tech.
European Union unveils Green Deal industrial plan to catch up to America's Inflation Reduction Act. German police crack down on anti-coal protest. Plus,
they write it up, they send it to Ohio, And Mike DeWine and the lawmakers click their heels and say, yes, sir.
Dark money groups led Ohio Republicans to redefine natural gas as green energy.
All of those redefinitions of reality and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
We kept asking questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why aren't you vetoing it? And now we find out they're just puppets. There's a marionetter in another state that is just making them do the dance. What's the point of an election?
The point is to get the puppets elected in Ohio. And they're doing pretty good at it. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, this story out of Ohio is blowing my mind. It comes not long after a huge scandal from the nuclear and coal industry, and now it's the natural gas. Man, is there any Republican in Ohio who can't be bought off?
Well, we'll find out in a moment. But first, in Germany, Swedish teen climate activist Greta Thunberg was detained and released by police this week at a protest against expansion of a controversial coal mine that will destroy the historic village of Lützerath. German officials say the coal is needed to address fossil energy shortages caused by Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. The demolition of Lützerath is part of a compromise deal reached between the government and energy giant RWE last year, allowing the company to destroy the village in return for agreeing to end its coal use by 2030 rather than 2038.
They're destroying the village in order to save it?
That's the theory. A new report reveals banks are still financing dirty fossil fuel projects despite their public pledges to stop. Banking giant HSBC made a secretive $340 million loan to RWE, the fossil energy company that is bulldozing that village, just 3 months after HSBC pledged to phase out coal funding.
HSBC is the worst.
The new report by a coalition of major environmental groups called Banking on Climate Chaos shows the world's biggest banks are still heavily investing in fossil fuels despite very public pledges to target net zero emissions. The top dirty dozen financial institutions include J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and HSBC. The report also found that since the adoption of the Paris Agreement 6 years ago, the world's largest banks have collectively given fossil fuel companies $4.6 trillion in funding.
And given the rest of us the finger.
Meanwhile, in Ohio,
some rich guys in another state got together and said, we want to change natural gas to give it a different definition because it suits our wealthy purposes.
That's Cleveland Plain Dealer editor Chris Quinn talking about how Ohio's Republican-controlled state legislature has falsely redefined polluting natural gas as green energy, despite the fact that it is a significant contributor to man-made global warming.
Unbelievable.
Documents uncovered by utility watchdog Energy and Policy Institute show that the Orwellian language signed into law by Ohio's Republican Governor Mike DeWine is the culmination of a dark money campaign by the American Legislative Exchange Council and other dark money groups to protect the fossil fuel industry.
Now that part, totally believable.
The new law also expands oil drilling in the state's parks. Be aware the dark money groups are taking their disinformation campaign to other states.
I'm serious. They just, ran the Speaker of the House out of Ohio because he took tens of millions of dollars from the nuclear and coal industry. Now they're shoveling in money from the natural gas industry. Is there anything you cannot buy off an Ohio Republican to do at this point?
Finally, the European Union this week unveiled a major clean tech industrial plan to accelerate deployment of renewable energy manufacturing as a counterweight to President Biden and the Democrats' landmark Inflation Reduction Act, which contains billions in subsidies for U.S.-based manufacturing. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said it was important to avoid switching dependence on Russian fossil fuels with dependence on China for raw materials.
We see aggressive attempts to attract our industrial capacities away to China and elsewhere. We have a compelling need to make this net zero transition without creating new dependency. We've learned our lessons from the fossil fuels.
Have we? Have we learned our lessons? I'm not yet sure, especially in Ohio.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I saw this. Catherine Rampell, she wrote something great. She said, there's been a scientific breakthrough. She said, researchers have identified a previously unknown species in D.C., like the cicadas. She said that these species stay underground for years at a time, typically 4 or 8 year intervals, and its members hide away until an auspicious change in the ecosystem. But then they bust out and wreak havoc. These species, Republicans who care about deficits. Yeah, when they're not in power, don't care. Spend like drunken sailors. The second they can hold a Democrat hostage, the second they can hold working people hostage, oh, do they come out to wreak the havoc. And here to share some thoughts on the havoc, I've asked our good friend Morris Pearl to come to share some thoughts with us. Morris is the chair of the Patriotic Millionaires, patrioticmillionaires.org. Morris, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks, Rick.
So have you seen these creatures, these Republicans who seem to care about deficits every so often?
Every so often. I mean, the way I explain it, Rick, imagine that your spouse gave you a budget of $50 to go to the grocery store to buy something. And you spent the $50 and you came back with the groceries and you thought you were doing a great job. And then weeks later, the spouse says, we have to cut down and this credit card bill is too high. So I'm not going to pay this credit card bill for this groceries unless you agree to, give up your prescriptions that you get every month. And that's exactly what it is.
Yep.
A president spends exactly what the Congress orders him to spend, to the penny. And then they come out months later and say, oh, the deficit's too big. So we have to cut down on paying for the stuff that you've already bought. It's like absurd.
I wish I could do that. It just doesn't work that way in the real world. But in GOP thought, I think they see this as an opportunity to get their pound of flesh. And again, we've been talking about this for the last several days. The pound of flesh is, let's stick it to working people again. And because it's telling to me that what they're trying to hold the country hostage over is cutting Social Security, which does nothing to add to the debt. By law, it can't. So exactly. It's very telling to me.
They just want to do something to feel like they're doing something to screw somebody else. And they won the election, they're in power, and they get I don't know.
Yeah, no, the cruelty is the point, I believe. Because, destroying Social Security and Medicare have been on their wet dream list for a very long time. And it seems all the time that's the club they pull out of the bag. And I keep asking my working class friends, how do you vote for people who keep telling you they want to make your life worse?
And what do your friends answer, Rick?
It's always some bit of the outrage candy. It's the race theory that's critical. It's the drag queens and it's all this other stuff. And I'm going, no, none of that stuff affects you. They're talking about destroying your ability to have a retirement, to be secure and not living in poverty when you get older. They're talking about doing that to you right now. And there isn't the outrage. There's the outrage that I would hope to expect.
And it's because their voters, the voters who are really like a rung or two above the bottom, they want to have someone to look down on.
Yeah.
That's what they want. I remember I saw that in To Kill a Mockingbird. You know, the white guy who accused the black guy of raping his daughter, he needs someone to look down upon. And I don't have any answer for him, because he's right. Because if we succeed in helping the people who are most poor, he's going to go from one running above them to being tied for the bottom. And if that's what he cares about, having someone to look down upon, he should vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. And this plays out in other arenas as well. I mean, the minimum wage pops into my head, because I can't tell you how many people go, well, I only make $15 an hour. If you raise $15 an hour, I'll be making minimum wage. You go, no, dum-dum. You'll get a little bit of bump too. Everybody gets a little bump. That's the reason corporate America is against it. Not just because the minimum wage worker is going to get a bump, but because everyone gets a bump and they have to share their profits, which they don't want to do.
Yeah, that is true. That is what we saw in the paper the other day, that the mandatory food safety training for huge numbers of workers is being taught by a company that's a nonprofit owned by the National Restaurant Association, which lobbies against raising the minimum wage.
Yep.
So every one of these workers who's trying to get a certificate to be a restaurant worker has to spend $15 to give to lobbyists who are trying to prevent him from earning $15 an hour. It's like maddening.
There's something Orwellian about that.
If the Teamsters tried to do that, it would be illegal. They're not allowed to use mandatory fees to do lobbying.
Yeah.
Apparently, somehow the restaurant owners are.
It shows you just how screwed up things are. And here's the thing, though, and this is where I'm growing more and more frustrated with our political system, because this idea that you saw Kirsten Sinema and the other one, Manchin, over in Switzerland, high-fiving each other that they're not going to do anything on the filibuster, and you got Manchin coming out with this Trust Act, which I guess we're going to do another Simpson Bowles-like committee that's going to come up with more bad ideas to harm working people, under the guise of, well, we're working in a bipartisan way to solve our debt problems. And I keep coming back to this because it's so important that people understand.
What debt problem?
Exactly.
What debt problem? Have you been struggling to pay off the national debt? No. And no one has either. It's not a problem. The United States of America has the unique advantage of the fact that they create US dollars.
Right.
It's kind of like if you promised someone that you'll give them an IOU next month. That's not hard.
So let's talk about that for a second then, Morris, because most people have the kitchen table economics ideas that I owe $1,000 on this, I have to pay that $1,000 back. I have a mortgage that's 2.5 times my yearly income. I have a huge debt to GDP ratio. We think in those terms. They train us to think that way in terms of the debt that we owe. How is that different?
Well, it's different for the specific reason that the United States of America prints money. They literally do.
Yeah, but you have to pay it back, right?
They print it. No. People use dollars. As long as we don't have so many dollars they become worthless, you can have more. It's kind of like there's no the debt the government issues and the dollars are kind of the same. You can exchange one for the other whenever you want. And the total number of dollars in existence, yes, has been up over time. And yes, people have seen some inflation. Some of that is because more working people have been getting some money from some of these earned income tax credits and things. Yes. And we've seen some inflation, but not so much that dollars are becoming worthless. As long as the amount of stuff we have in the country is more than the amount of dollars we have, we're doing fine. And because each dollar you have in your pocket means you can get $1 worth of stuff. And as long as there's more stuff that you can buy, and I'm sure there is, Rick, your dollars have value and the government can make more of them. That's what they do. It would be kind of like Delta Airlines complaining they're running out of frequent flyer points. They don't run out. They can just change the numbers in your account whenever they want. And it's the same way. The government works the same way. They can change the numbers of how many dollars are in the bank whenever they want. It's not like your individual checking account where you have to put money in before you take money out. It's different if you're the one who creates the money.
Right. No, I get that. And but they've trained us to think in this way that we have this huge number that our minds just can't comprehend. Because $34 trillion. I have no idea what that looks like. I don't even think you know what that looks like.
I wouldn't dream of knowing what it looks like. What they want is they want people to accept the fact that there's this underclass in America, because that's how they can get people to work without having a fair share of the profits. Oh, there's not enough money, that we just have to work for whatever the boss tells us to work for.
Yeah, no, that's
what they want is a bunch of people who are willing to work for starvation wages, because that's what a certain part of the economy is sadly based on.
No, you're spot on. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. Morris Pearl. Morris is the chair of the Patriotic Millionaires Group, patrioticmillionaires.org, their website, if you want to check out the work that they do. Now, the rich and powerful came together in Switzerland. I wanted to get some of your thoughts on the World Economic Forum meeting and all of the pomp and circumstance and all of the folks, hey, look at me, all the pimping and preening that went on, talking about how we're going to solve the world's problems without actually talking about what I think is the largest problem in the world, massive redistribution of wealth that steals from workers and, the distribution upward, and then the lack of sharing. I'm curious your thoughts.
I mean, we actually had a few members of our group, Patriotic Millionaires, a few members of Patriotic Millionaires were in Davos, Switzerland, protesting, not as official members. And we've been telling these people that, frankly, they're failing, and they're going to fail completely with the gross inequality that the current system is encouraging. Like, they tried that in South Africa when I was a teenager. Apartheid. It did not end well for the rich people either. And people are getting fed up. We've got people marching in the streets. 2 years ago, we had people rioting in the Capitol. People are not putting up with this anymore. And that's why they're voting for, radical solutions on the left or the right or the middle or wherever, because they're not putting up with, a few people getting richer and richer and richer, in part because they don't pay taxes, while the rest of you who get taxes deducted from your paycheck every single week are not able to get ahead. And, one of the things we work on, Patriotic Millionaires, is in at least making it more fair so the rich people get money deducted from their income too, the way that everyone who works for a living does. And that will slowly have some effect to even things out, whereas a little bit more of a share will go to people that work for a living and a little bit less of a share to the 1% that has a humongous share now. And that's one of the things that we've been working on at Patriotic Millionaires, in addition to minimum wage.
Now, let's talk about that for a second, because the Republicans came out with their tax thing this week, which I argue would make inequality much worse. It would be a massive tax on working people, and I think would cause enormous inflation. It's not going to pass. It's not going to get anywhere. But just the fact that they threw it out there, a federal sales tax of 23% starting in 2025, I think would cause massive problems. But it would be a huge savings for folks like you, who I don't think you spend an awful lot of money. So we wouldn't get that much from you, I don't think.
Well, people with high incomes, it'll be a big win, because they currently pay more than 23% of their income in income taxes. But people with low incomes, who are in the 10% bracket and who are living paycheck to paycheck, which most people are if they're only earning a few tens of thousands of dollars per year, they'll all of a sudden go from 10% income tax to 23% income tax. It'll be much worse for them. Whereas the people who are now in the 37% bracket and save a lot of their money, they'll go to paying 23% on part of their money and nothing on another part. So it'll be a huge win for high-income people and a huge loss for low-income people. And frankly, that's what the Republicans want. They want less money for the masses and more money for the small donor class, or whatever you want to call them.
So what's the right direction? Because we do need major tax reform. I've been hearing a lot about a wealth tax, because, you see it all over social media. You got these rich guys saying, hey, I don't pay any taxes because I don't have any income. because we only tax people who work on income and capital gains when you win on Wall Street. How should we go about ensuring that we get the resources we need?
People look at, the really rich people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and whatnot. And the reason they don't pay income tax is they don't have any income. And you don't need the income if you're a billionaire. If you're a billionaire, you can live off the billions you already have. You don't need to work you don't need to have a regular paycheck. So if you don't have an income, you don't have an income tax. And of course, when you think about it, of course, if you're a billionaire, you don't need the income. But so we want to have some tax on money people make by the value of their stock going up. That's how these guys made all of their money, essentially.
Right.
But it's not taxable, not at all. So we are suggesting that, and Senator Wyden is also suggesting, with more power than we have, he's the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, we're suggesting a tax either on the amount that your wealth goes up or on your absolute amount of your wealth that would somehow make the very rich people, the billionaires, pay some taxes. And people would still be incentivized to get rich. I don't think anybody's not started a business because they said, I don't want to bother becoming a billionaire because I'll have to pay some tax on my second billion.
Yeah, what am I going to do with all this money?
Forget the whole thing. No, I think most people will be very happy with the few tens of millions. And those people who really do get into make their second billion, it's okay to charge them some taxes on that second billion.
No, of course it is.
Subsequent billions.
Because ultimately, do we need to have a handful of people with the kind of power that Elon Musk is abusing right now?
Well, some ways money becomes power and power becomes money because you can use power, you can use money to get more political power and then use your newfound political power to change the rules to make even more money. And it's sort of a cycle of getting more power and more money.
Thanks.
And we're not going to change it. There's nothing we're proposing that will really change that. If we charge people a few percent of their second billion, no, they'll still be billionaires and very rich and able to, run for office if they want to. But we will at least make things a little bit more fair for the millions and millions of Americans who work for a living and have tax deducted from their check every week.
Yeah, a little bit. Patrioticmillionaires.org is the website. Check that out. Morris Pearl, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Always great talking with you. I look forward to having you back again real soon.
Thank you, Rick. I'll be back. See you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Good stuff, our good friend Morris Pearl. Make sure you check out the website, patrioticmillionaires.org. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show for working people on the talk. If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our labor history in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you may remember, it's been a couple of months, and we're looking to get Andrew Warren back on the show. But you may remember this Andrew Warren, who Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, suspended because, as a state attorney, Andrew Warren, said that, his office would would not prosecute certain crimes. And, DeSantis, suspended him, threw him out of office in a very dictatorial way. While the court ruled today, according to the Tampa Bay Times, the U.S. District Judge Robert Hinkle, he says, look, the allegations that DeSantis made, they're false. He wrote in his ruling that Mr. Warren's well-established policy, followed in every case by every prosecutor in the office, was to exercise prosecutorial discretion at every stage of every case. Any reasonable investigation would have confirmed this. He ruled DeSantis violated the Constitution of the state, violated his, the state attorney's First Amendment rights, all this stuff, but is not going to put him back into his position. Claims he doesn't have the ability to restore him to office. And this is, again, is another one of these things where you have politicians, we have Republicans who are willing to break the rules. Rules be damned. They don't apply to us. We're going to do what we want. And they get away with this stuff time and time again. And yeah, they get the slap on the wrist. Oh, you're wrong. Don't do it again. But it's never made right. Now, understand what they're doing here. He's saying, you know what? I'm accusing you of something that you didn't do, but you're not going to prosecute the crimes that I want. I have the power, you as an elected official, I have the power to oust you. And my Republican friends are like, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He's not prosecuting the fill in the blank. Here's my problem with this. These very same people would lose their ever-loving freaking minds. And look, J.B. Pritzker and the governor of Illinois, not going to do this. But if Pritzker went in and removed all of the more than 70 sheriffs in Illinois who publicly vowed that they would defy the law of Illinois on this this assault weapons ban, if he went in and removed all of them, the right would lose their ever-loving freaking minds. But if you use the same justification, he's not following the law. They got to go. This is what having this outweighted power and people who are willing to flout the law and willing to break the law, this is what happens. So yeah, you're going to get a slap on the wrist. Don't do it again. Don't do it. Bad. But no power to make the person whole. No power to hold him responsible. And DeSantis is looking at it going, okay, I'm wrong. Yeah, so what? Still not getting back. Don't care. This is where we are. You have a Republican Party right now hell-bent on their way or the highway. And again, this is where my Democratic friends, this is where you have to figure out how you're going to deal with this. It's like any relationship. It's the one who cares the least has the most power. Republicans care the least about this country, which gives them so much power because they are willing to trash it. They are willing to burn it down. They are willing to destroy it. Look at what they've proposed. Look at what they've come forth with. Just, you don't need me. You don't need my interpretation. Look at what the first club out of the bag is on talking about what I don't even know is a constitutional debt limit. They're going to use the debt limit to make working people's lives better. And if they don't get their wet dream, they don't get their fetish met by destroying Social Security and Medicare, they're going to crash not just the American economy, but the global economy. Oh, Rick, you're being hyperbolic. No. If you don't pay the bills, things stop. If you don't pay the bills, our credit rating goes through the roof. We end up paying more. But don't worry. They've got an exit plan. That exit plan, shoot the hostage. Who's the hostage? You. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1986. That was the first time Dr. Martin Luther King Day was observed as a national holiday. A powerful voice for civil rights, Dr. King was assassinated in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while standing on the second floor of the Lorraine Motel. He was in Memphis standing up for the rights of black garbage collectors. Dr. King gave his life supporting those fighting for union recognition. Throughout his work as a civil rights leader, Dr. King spoke powerfully of the importance of unions. Addressing a group of Teamsters in 1967, he said, "Union recognition meant the real beginning. Union meant strength, and recognition meant the employer's acknowledgement of that strength." Perhaps his most stirring reflections on the labor movement came in a speech he delivered to the AFL-CIO in Springfield, Illinois in 1965. King said, "The two most dynamic movements that reshaped the nation during the past 3 decades are the labor and civil rights movements. Our combined strength is potentially enormous. We have not used a fraction of it for our own good or for the need of society as a whole. If we make the war on poverty a total war, if we seek higher standards for all workers for an enriched life, we have the ability to accomplish it, and our nation has the ability to provide it. If our two movements unite their social pioneering initiative 30 years from now, people will look back on this day and honor those who had the vision to see the full possibilities of modern society and the courage to fight for their realization. On that day, the brotherhood of man, undergirded by economic security, will be a thrilling and creative reality."
Sometimes little things can be a big deal. For example, in considering ways to help protect Mother Earth from global environmental rampages by us humans, look out your window. In many cities and most suburbs, chances are you're looking at a lawn, a grass-carpeted yard that looks almost the same as the one next door, the one next to it, etc. Some see a lush expanse of green grass as the ultimate in landscaping beauty, and some even consider a well-manicured lawn to be a measure of one's moral character. Beauty and piety aside, though, the spread and intensification of lawn culture has become an environmental extravagance that is already unsustainable in whole sections of our country, and it adds up to a steadily increasing burden on Earth's essential resources. Grass itself is natural, but keeping it alive across thousands of square miles is not, for it requires a deluge of chemicals and endless rivers of water applied again and again, yard after yard, trying to keep those plots green. And, oh, the irony, their green includes eliminating bees, butterflies, and, well, nature. One statistic tells the tale. Americans use more than 10 times more poison per acre on lawns than America's farmers use on their crops. Just glance around you and you'll see the grass lawn imperative at work throughout your community. It surrounds local schools, greens up corporate complexes, spreads across college campuses, forms miles of golf courses, etc. This is Jim Hightower saying, this is not a diatribe against grassy plots, which can be natural joys. But let's get real, get creative, and get in touch with the full balance and beauty of nature. You can promote ground cover sanity right where you live with native plants, xeriscaping, organic methods, rain gardens, and rewilding your yard with things like prairie grass. For help, go to rewild.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the fun and entertainment that we're getting out of Congress, and you do this, you knew we were going to get it. You knew the fun was going to begin when McCarthy basically sold his soul to be speaker. And look, I look at this George Santos thing, just as, or Anthony DeVolder, or what is it, Katrina, Carita, I don't know what his drag name was, but it's getting weirder and weirder. And what I find interesting, all of my Democratic liberal leaning friends are, no, he needs to go, he needs to resign. Stop trying to save the Republican Party from themselves. This is who they are. This is who they are. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, well, where we are and where things are going. I've asked our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman and political analyst, to come share some thoughts on, well, one of the claims that Santos made, that if he served just one term in Congress, health care for life, pensions for life. Got to get some thoughts on that. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thank you, Rick.
So this is out of all of the lies and all of the things, and we could talk about that if we have to. The thing that caught my attention is he actually bought the idea that you serve one term in Congress, health care for life, pension for life.
A relative of mine, I won't say who because she listens to your show, emailed this around a few years ago to everybody, and I had to break it to her. There were a couple of things on there that's sort of true. But the one term and health care for life, not true. Pension for life, not true. $175,000 pension for life, not true. So maybe Santos, who's told a lot of lies, actually read that and thought it was the truth.
Yeah, I'm just stunned at the level of misinformation that flies around in those circles. That people, what is it? What they call it, the Mandela effect, I guess, where you think something's true that really isn't. Or
right.
It's just remarkable to me. And what do you make of this? Let's real quick of this Santos situation before we get into some serious stuff. I'm of the mindset, just if you're the Democrats, shut up and let the Republicans deal with this albatross, because he is really what the current party is. It's all about the show. It's all about the spotlight. It's all about, hey, look at me. It's not about governing or policy or even saving the institutions. It's about attention seeking, and he is the culmination of this whole movement.
Well, it's political entertainment gone mad. There is one thing about all of this, though, and I can relate it to a lot of different cases. I'll just relate it to one. Al Franken. Al Franken did not have his chance. He one Democratic congresswoman from New York went after him, resigned, and it all piled on, and he never got his chance to go before the ethics committee. And it was acceptable. Okay, you leave. We find you guilty without your day. And when people were talking about, including Republicans, we're not going to see him. Well, I don't care who you are. If you show up and you're totally psychotic, whatever you are, if you have a certificate in your hand,
yep,
and it says from your state you're the member, you're going to be seated. Number two, they couldn't do anything about him beforehand anyway, because how can you take somebody to the ethics committee that's not a member yet? So now he's in there, and I don't know if I were there and if I were the Democratic side, let him sit.
Absolutely.
Let him go on a committee.
Absolutely.
It's the Republicans' problem. The Democrats have run into some of this where the Republicans should have just sat back, and let it go, and they didn't. On Santos's case, obviously there's something horribly wrong with him. As you know, Rick, he hasn't developed any friends out there. He came in, he wasn't, down low, repentant, etc. He just came in, going at it just like he has before the election. And now the longer he stays, there's questions about, did some of the top people, campaign people, leaders know that everything was fabricated?
Yeah, how could you not? I mean, seriously, how could you not? If you paid for the opposition research, because every candidate does this, right? I mean, when you run for a first time, you want to know what your opponents are going to say about you. You spend some money to dig into your own past, and you work with an investigator to do that, right?
Well, we call it research.
Yeah, no, you're investigating your past. You want to know what's in your closet,
expensive.
even if you don't know what's in your closet.
We do it. If we don't do it, guess what? The political parties do it. Sure, they did. And by the way, the researchers, you pay big money. I mean, $10, $15, $20, $30,000 for these things. We've done it. It's been done against us. It's the way it goes. Here's the thing, though, Rick, about this. This was easy. The first $1,000 on opposition research, and by the way, the parties do it on their own candidates. The first $1,000 told you that he wasn't who he said he was, even education-wise. The first $1,000.
No, that's the first $50.
Yeah.
So the question is, and this is where I keep coming.
Sure, this was known, but time went on. He was going to win. It was a seat. It's a vote. And then, of course, eventually he gets thrown out or he quits. They have a special election. They bear through 90 days or whatever, hoping to win another seat again and then have a vote.
Yeah. Do you think he resigns?
I don't know. I don't know if he'll resign.
I don't see it in any way, shape, or form that he's going to resign.
Yeah, I mean, you've asked the right question. Normally, I will say yes. I don't see it because he has. Look, I mean, he's got some kind of huge mental issue here. Something is not clicking right.
Yeah, I'm not going with that. I think he's just a con man. I don't know that that's a mental illness. I think he's just a con man. Like I saw the former guy.
Some of this like narcissism and making falsifications. Some of it even goes beyond con man to where it's some form of a illness.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's gone on so long, it's turned into a constant psychosis of lying for the guy.
Yeah, he's believed his own BS. I mean, you look at, but this is who the Republicans have been putting forth. Look at Herschel Walker. Look at Trump. Look at the people that they've put forth who've created these fantastical stories that people have bought into, even though a lot of it is based on, Santa's total BS, but most of it's BS.
Well, and look, people follow people. Herschel Walker, who had his chance with his family, who privately went to him and said, let's all go clean. I mean, they were offering to really probably elect him, all right? They offered him that, his 21-year-old son.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it. And it was one revelation after another. And I don't know that woman. Well, yeah, you have a child with her. The DNA shows that. But he just kept going, and he kept getting votes.
No, it's crazy where we are. And the sad reality is and I keep coming back to this, Democrats have to stop trying to bail them out and let them be who they are, because this is who the Republican Party has become. Want to get some of your thoughts on the classified document stuff. Evidently, there's classified stuff everywhere. I was checking my closet to see if maybe I stumbled on some classified stuff. I know you were in Congress a while. I'm sure you got some cute folders laying around.
Well, they sent 5 storage bins full of my stuff here, and held it while I was being held, incarcerated. And I got out, and there were, constituent documents in there, which I personally went through everything and shredded those documents. But I was just thinking, somebody packed all this stuff up and just put it in these bins. There could have been other people's office things in there that weren't mine. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do know that there are those in this system that are, okay, here's the difference between Biden and Trump, and here was this and here was that. The bottom line is, when the president spoke on the issue, I think it was yesterday, and he said there is no there, and then he made a statement at the end, and this one bothers me. I'm following what the lawyers have told me they want me to do. That was President Biden's answer. That's what Trump says.
Yeah.
So lawyers told me to do it. It's a political wash. It's a legal wash. We can argue all day long. Yes, Trump fought it. Trump reacted different. But the bottom line is these documents must be all over the place, all over the government. It goes back to the efficiency of the United States government. Now, just think about it.
No, I am. I'm, because this is not new. I mean, Hillary's emails. I mean, there was even talk, back during the Condi years that, who knows if you go back far enough, how many of those colorful folders are laying around? And I want to get your thoughts on Trump's latest gymnastic on why he had the stuff. He said that evidently they give out these classified documents and they put them in cute little envelopes, cute little folders that have words on them like classified and confidential and other words. I don't know what other words he was talking about, but classified, confidential, and other words. And he thought they were nice keepsakes because they only collect the documents. They don't want the folders back. So he's kind of a hoarder, I guess, in that he hoarded all these folders. There were no documents in it because he claims the FBI stuffed those in there. You buying any of this?
I mean, I would believe that Trump would. I do believe that Trump would particularly keep empty folders. Now, what those folders will say is they'll say classified or they'll say top secret, and they'll have usually a number on them. That number somewhere connects to something in a database somewhere that tells you what's in that folder if you can access it, okay?
Right. I
do believe, think about this for a second, he would collect empty folders and one day sell them on eBay. Well, come on, am I wrong?
Yeah, no, not on eBay. I mean, this would be a way to fleece the flock even more. I mean, he's got them buying flags and hats.
Whatever.
No, okay. But
pass them out with a trading card.
Educate me, if you will, because maybe I don't understand how classified documents are handled. You said there's a folder, it's got a number, there's a document associated with that folder and that document that they track. How is it that these folders then get to go by the wayside? How is it that we lose these?
Well, they come in a folder, and I don't think necessarily they're taken back necessarily in that folder. They're passed out. Normally they're returned. The folder could be returned, or the document would be returned. It would be most likely, shredded or taken back to the source where it came from, or it would be stored in the White House and then eventually moved, into the archives. I mean, they could do it that way too.
Is there a way to maybe fix this problem? I mean, because now, this is, a major kerfuffle on both sides. Maybe this is a bipartisan opportunity to go, there seems to be classified, confidential, top secret stuff floating around. Maybe we should, get a handle on that.
Well, they should. There's a couple of lessons here. Number one, for those who buy into the whole government QAnon conspiracy deals, okay? The government's doing this and doing that. It should teach everybody that the government is not bright. The government messes stuff up. They can't even handle classified documents. It's not like they produce 30,000 of these things.
Right.
Here's one to Donald Trump. Here's one to the chief of staff. That's two. We want two back, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to count these things. It's not like they're distributing them to thousands of people at one time. The government is not efficient. The second thing I think we can learn from this is that there's got to be a better way to do this system. How on earth, when you know that document 5, number 6, came from the NSA, document 6, number 7, came from the CIA, it went to Donald Trump, it went to whoever, Joe Biden. How do they not know then what occurs and where those documents go? Because they're not supposed to be reproduced in any fashion. So how do they not know? There's got to be a way that, and when a president leaves, that these are accounted for.
Yeah.
This is a learning lesson because, no matter who did what, I'll bet you if they look back, they're going to find, something in Texas on a ranch, with Bush. They're going to find something. And here these documents are floating around everywhere and just literally just shouldn't be.
Is this a big deal? I mean, honestly, we're talking about, former presidents having this stuff, part of their archives, part of their libraries. Is this something for us to really get all worked up about? Because I got to imagine that this is not a new situation.
No, I think this goes back. As far as a big deal, yes. And I'll I'll tell you, as legally as I can tell you this one. Previously, I saw a document, and how that document came into the hands of the United States government was the key to the document I saw. And you don't want that kind of document revealed because then it tells other people how we acquire things. Now, we all know that's how the whole, system runs.
Sure.
So I've seen documents myself that shouldn't be taken out anywhere, as other members of Congress have seen them, because it tells our opponents, foreign countries, too much. It tells them what we're doing, how we're doing it, or somehow leaks out how we're doing it. So this is a big deal, whether it's a member of Congress that, somehow classified information is leaked, or how we got it's leaked, or whether it's not a leak, but whether it's a president hanging on to these things. I mean, these were documents. We know North Korea, Iran. What what are in those documents, and if they went into the wrong hands. And here's the other thing. Both Trump and Biden, I'll make this fair, their lawyers are looking at it. Who gave these lawyers classified clearance?
No, excellent point. No, but here, I think the reason this is now a thing is because I actually believe that as many have said, that Trump would sell these on eBay. And that is a problem. Whereas I don't think any of the past presidents, George Bush or Reagan or I don't think any of them would have done that, or I would have even thought that they would have done that. I don't have the same feeling of confidence that Trump wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we all know that, the other presidents have had a more sense of respect of the institution and the nature of the institution. I think we all know that, or at least we all should know that. The problem with these documents is that, let's say Biden had no awareness, which I don't think the president had awareness of the Iran document was there, or the whatever document was there. But the fact remains, those documents are laying around, and somebody finds them, and I don't know, the janitor, who knows? They just shouldn't be laying around. So, you have to start worrying about who actually can see these things and what happens to them.
No, I'm right there with
you. Some of them have got to be so sensitive that seeing the document tells you things you shouldn't know about how we acquired the document, and that's the danger.
No, you're right. Lastly, I want to get your thoughts on this week's entertainment in the House. They've got a new tax bill going to bang around, basically reviving the old Steve Forbes flat tax with, what is it, their fair tax scheme. We're going to have a 23% federal sales tax.
Well, there's the Fair Tax Act, as they called it. They've called it, well, when I was there, there was the flat tax, which Dick Armey of Texas had supported. And the flat tax was a different concept than this, the sales tax, which is a problem. Of course, sales tax, they say, well, if you buy a Mercedes-Benz, you've got enough money to buy a Benz, so therefore, it's a more fair tax. But, tax on products, some people that are just the average John and Susie Smith have to buy things, and to pay a national sales tax on them, I think, would be a problem. I would assume that the Republicans would support a flat tax before they would go down that path of trying to do a sales tax.
Yeah, I mean, the argument is it's a fair, it's flat, it's the same for everybody. Making that argument that it's fair for everybody. It's not. Working people would get massively screwed. You want to see inflation go through the roof? Add 23% to everything you buy.
Right. That's why the flat tax was on income, where Bill Gates pays the same percentage, that I pay.
Yeah, but Bill Gates doesn't have any income.
But what's that?
Bill Gates doesn't have any income. He doesn't collect the paycheck like you do.
I mean, you'd have to correct that too to prove Bezos and Bill Gates aren't actually technically in a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
So, but the sales tax, I always did think, and then say, well, we won't put food in there. Well, thank goodness. But it's still, you have to buy certain products.
Yep.
You got a baby, you got to buy certain products, and who wants to pay the average person to pay tax on that?
Going to be fun and entertaining to see how what comes up next. But Bob, as always,
that's nothing's going to happen on that. I'm going to find the entertainment with the speaker meeting with the president, and that's not the entertainment value, meeting with the president on the debt ceiling. The entertainment value is going to be watching the caucus, watching the landmines that McCarthy has to walk through when he walks to the White House and back, and he gets near Capitol Hill. That's where the landmines are going to be.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, good stuff, my friend.
Thank you, Rick.
Good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst. No, I mean, let the fun begin. Going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people from the top. Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1909. This date marked one of the deadliest workplace disasters in Chicago history. It took place a little over a mile offshore near 71st Street on Lake Michigan. A group of predominantly Irish laborers were working on a tunnel to bring fresh water to the city's growing south side. The work was grueling, and the conditions were frigid and dangerous. Workers were paid as little as $1 to $2 a week for their labor. On this date, the workers were housed in a wooden crib on the lake. For reasons unknown today, a fire broke out in the workers' sleeping quarters. It was rumored at the time that someone had sprinkled gasoline around to ward off bed bugs, but no cause was ever confirmed. The fire quickly consumed the wooden dormitory that housed the tunnel workers, leaving the men with little choice but to begin jumping into the freezing lake and climb onto ice floes. One man was able to make a frantic telephone call to the offshore office. Relaying the message, the crib is on fire. For God's sake, send help at once, or we'll be burned alive. The tug! And the line went dead. Accounts vary, with estimates between 40 and 70 men dying from the fire and drowning. The exact number is uncertain, because many of the workers were day laborers and migrant workers. Little information about their identities remains. Some of the bodies were never recovered. Some that were found were buried at Mount Greenwood Cemetery, where a plaque reads, "In memory of crib fire, 45 unknown men, January 20th, 1909. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So I've gotten a bunch of emails on the classified document stuff. And look, if Biden had them, and he did, he's got to be held accountable. But the question then comes back to, how are we handling these documents? How is it that this stuff gets, left laying around? If that's the reality. Now, the difference, and trying to have this argument of justifying one over the other, not politically going to be helpful. This is where, as a government, maybe we take this as a learning opportunity. Oh, I don't know, to fix it. I would have thought after Hillary's emails, maybe we would have tightened that up a bit. And as I've said, I've talked to a number of people who have had, high security clearances and how these documents are supposed to be moved along and how they're supposed to be tracked. If this were just an average, somebody lower down on the totem pole, much greater consequence. But because these are presidents and vice presidents, we're handling this differently. Now, from my perspective, there are two very different situations. Yes, both had classified documents, and we got to find out why. And trust me, there's going to be hearings, there will be subcommittees, there will be all kinds of testimonials, there'll be all kinds of stuff on why Biden screwed this up, and it's all Biden's fault. We understand that. It's coming. Get ready for it. But seriously, as a nation, and we should be demanding that the people in charge of these documents do a better job. Because the reality is if they get into the wrong hands, our enemies, our adversaries, they're going to find out information that probably we don't want them to have. And I'm pretty sure across the political spectrum, we don't want Iran or North Korea or Russia or China having access to our classified information, just like they don't want us to have access to theirs. We got to do better. I want to hear your thoughts, though. You got a justification? You got a mental gymnastic? I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you download the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. Appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.